Hey guys, Alec back here again. And what I want to talk about today is something that's important for a business owner, because eventually, whether it's now or whether it's in a number of years or whether it's next month, it makes no difference. Eventually, you would likely want to sell your business. You want to pass it on to your family, relatives. You're still going to sell it. And what's the value of your business? What can you actually sell it for? And when I say what can you actually sell it for, let's look at it relative to market conditions and come up with a number that is appropriate for your business. Now, for those of you that are not aware, my company, I do buy small and mid-sized businesses. Now, if you have a small business that you're wanting to sell, get in touch with me. The information is in the description of this video below. You can get in touch with me down there. Have a look, and you'll be able to get in touch. If you know someone who's interested in selling their business, send them our way and let's have a conversation. We're not interested in lowballing anyone. We'll give you a fair offer. And the only thing that I'm asking in return is transparency and openness and an understanding of what the market is relative to your type of business. And that will determine, the market always determines the value of your particular business. Now, when we talk about the market, we want to talk about where does your business actually stand? And this particular slide gets into a number of different things. So what can my company be sold for? So let's take a look at this graphic for a second. The vertical axis is a selling multiple of EBITDA, and the horizontal axis is the EBITDA in millions of dollars. So just as a refresher, EBITDA is your earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. So you're going to take your profit and loss, and you're going to deduct your interest payments, deduct any taxes that are sitting on your P&L. You're going to deduct depreciation, and if you happen to have any amortization shown on your balance sheet, you're going to deduct that too. And that's how you're going to find your EBITDA. Okay? So more or less, for a small business, we're going to be in the range of 2 times to 4 times a multiple of your EBITDA. So if your EBITDA is $200,000, you're probably going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 2 times earnings in terms of a selling price. And then if you're higher, let's say over $1 million, you're going to be up maybe 4 or even 5 times earnings. When I say earnings, I mean EBITDA in terms of the selling price. So if you got $1 million in EBITDA, you're going to sell your company probably for somewhere between 4 and 5 million. And if you got, say, 200 or 300,000 in EBITDA, you're probably going to sell it for somewhere between 2 and 3 times. So that's more or less the range that you're going to be in as a small business owner. Let's look at some of the text on the left-hand side. So what's some of the characteristics of a small business? When I say here general business, that means there's a lot of different competition, kind of run-of-the-mill, construction work, distribution, healthcare, not any high tech or anything like that. Generally low margin. You're going to be making somewhere between 5 and 15% on average. Your business is likely not optimized, and you probably don't even know that. A lot of business owners don't understand that. They think that they got everything, down to a T, but you probably don't. Essentially, no barriers to entry, so competition can jump in pretty much any time. And the business is not liquid. And what I mean by that is your shares are not traded on the stock market, so you can't effectively convert them to cash quickly. You have to sell your business in order to convert those shares into cash. And When I say motivated seller, usually when someone wants to sell their company, they're pretty interested in selling the company. If they've made that decision and they're wanting to sell. Now let's compare that to companies that generate larger dollar value in annual earnings, annual EBITDA. Generally, there's higher barriers to entry. There are higher margin businesses like software and software development, high tech. They're usually in a high growth sector, and they've pretty much optimized their internals, their internal operations. And of particular interest is the fact that if they're a public company, they have very liquid assets. Those shares can be sold almost instantaneously. Compare that to a small business, which that just doesn't happen. That has, the whole business has to be sold in order for those shares to be sold, or some percentage of the business has to be sold to an individual or a company to convert that to cash. But it's a slow process compared to a public company. And typically, because public companies are what they are, with typically millions of shares, with millions of different shareholders, the seller is not particularly motivated. So let's look at the graphic again. So small businesses, somewhere between 2 and 4 times EBITDA would be what you can expect to sell your company for. And that, quite frankly, doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether you're light on assets or even heavy on assets. Just because you have a construction company that has a couple $1 million worth of equipment that's on the books, and you've depreciated them most likely, and this happens a lot with companies that are for sale. Most of that equipment is older. It's been almost fully depreciated, but then the buyer has to bear in mind that they're going to have to replace that equipment. That money's got to come from somewhere. And that's why the government allows you to depreciate your assets. So just because your books say you've got $1 million worth of equipment doesn't mean they're worth $1 million. They're most likely not worth $1 million, but they are part of the operations of the business. That's not going to really affect the multiple. So what I mean by that is if you've got a business that's construction with a lot of assets, a lot of hard assets, loaders, bulldozers, trucks, heavy equipment, it's not really going to add much in terms of a factor for for the sale of your business. It's EBITDA that is going to be the driving factor. Because again, your construction company needs that equipment in order to operate, and you are selling business. Compare that to a service company, let's say an engineering company, that has a few computers, some software, not really a whole lot of assets, but they generate the same kind of earnings that you do. Again, computers are necessary for the engineering company, and so is the software in order to run the business. So every business has different needs from a tangible or intangible asset standpoint. However, the amount of cash that is generating is the primary driving factor in terms of the valuation of the company. In 2020, the average small business sold for 2.71 times its EBITDA. And I just checked this on Biz Buy Sell. If you are familiar with the site, that it's a big one that sells small businesses primarily, bizbuysell.com. In any particular month, only 1 out of 13 businesses that are listed sell. Roughly 1 out of 13. It's just over 7%, which is pretty mind-boggling, but that's the reality. And I've checked other quarters as well, and you can take a look at that, and you can verify me. I'm telling you the truth. 1 out of 13 sell. Why is that? Well, there's a number of different reasons. The primary reason is the business just priced too high. I mean, if you go through different different listings, you can get a good feel for what company is priced right and what company is just priced out to lunch. If you've got a business that's generating, so let's say $300,000 a year, and you're selling it for $3 million, that's a 10 times multiple. You're not going to sell your business. I'm going to tell you straight up, it's not going to happen. If you're in that 2 to 4 range, you've got a good chance. But you got to be straight up with who you're selling to. And then if you are using a broker, make sure you pick a good broker. I'll give you a perfectly good example. Okay, so there's an electrical contracting company in Florida that's for sale by one really incredibly incompetent broker. And he's much older than me, and I'm 56. When I say incompetent, I mean totally incompetent. When I tried to get information for this particular business to assess whether or not I want to buy it, and I have an interest in electrical contracting companies, construction companies, absolutely interested in buying them, and I do. So I asked him to send me a non-disclosure. He sent me a non-disclosure. And then he asked me, oh, by the way, are you licensed electrically in Florida? I said, I'm not licensed electrically. I'm not looking to be licensed electrically. I'm not an electrician. I'm a businessman. I run companies, I develop companies, and I increase profit for companies. Well, you got to have a license. And then he hung up on me. So in fact, by checking with the state of Florida, you do not have to be an electrician to own an electrical contracting company. You need someone who is registered with the state as the managing electrician, or the one that is holding the master license for the company. So you can have a general manager that has an electrician's license, and you can run a company in Florida. You can be 100% owner, and you do not have to have an electrical license personally as an electrician. I'm not going back to school to get all the appropriate registration items for every single type of business that I'm buying. It's just, first of all, it's not physically possible. Second of all, it's not necessary. There are some industries where you absolutely have to have a license. For instance, you can't have a controlling interest in the USA for an accounting firm, a CPA firm. You can have up to 49%, but you can't control any CPA firm if you're not a CPA. So, and the same goes with medical offices and medical practices. You've got to be a doctor in order to own those businesses. But there's others that you don't. Okay, I don't need a professional engineer's license in the state of North Carolina to own a North Carolina consulting engineering firm. I do need a professional engineer on staff that is licensed and is registered with the state in order to operate the company. So bear that in mind. Now back to my example. I kind of went off on a tangent. Back to my example. That broker that's selling that electrical contractor didn't check with the state to understand what the restrictions are. And he outright, arrogantly, is not selling this guy's company. And the guy is still for sale. This is several months later. He doesn't understand what the requirements are. So he's trying to find an electrician who can buy a $2 million company. Maybe he'll find one. But he's absolutely reduced his market because of his incompetence, this broker. So if you're selling your company, find yourself a solid broker who has a good, strong background, and do some good vetting on them to make sure you got the right person. Other reasons why there's only 1 in 13 businesses sell. I mentioned it, poor broker representation. Just not doing it right. Now, the seller changing the price and terms, I'll give you a pretty good specific example of what happened with one that I just finished. He was trying to change the price on me. Not in the downward direction, in the upward direction. Attorneys also can have an impact on limiting sales by just kind of getting in the way. Books being a mess, that's definitely one that's up there. Business is maybe going obsolete. That is a factor. Sellers that are unethical, definitely a factor. Customer concentration. If you've got a bigger business and a large percentage of your businesses from a sales standpoint is with only one or two customers, like let's say one customer is 50% of your business, that's going to limit the people that are willing to buy your company, because if you lose that one customer, you lost half your sales, for example. And that's a lot of risk to take on. It's already a lot of risk to buy a company that is a small business for someone who is coming in off the street, so to speak. But then to have not a good diverse appropriation of customers, that can be a limiting factor as well. And then, of course, financing can be a problem, and other inexperienced advisors that people are referring to. And again, I'll get into one example in this video later. Okay, so that's some of the reasons why only 1 in 13, approximately 1 out of only 13 businesses sell. So if you want your company to sell, bear in mind those things that I just mentioned. And be aware that you're going to only sell your company for 2 to 4 times your bid of being kind of in that range for a small business. You're only going to sell it somewhere between 2 and 4 times earnings. To expect more, you're really being unrealistic, and you're going to be one of those factors of 12 out of 13 that do not sell. So just want to mention one other thing. When you have a public company, they generally will give much higher price to earning ratios. For example, as of May the 24th, Apple is selling at a price to earnings ratio of 23.2 times. So the more EBITDA you have, the higher the multiple you can sell your company for, but most small businesses are going to be in that 2 to 4 times range. So I hope I've explained that. Do your own due diligence on that. You want to check me on it? By all means, check it out. I'm telling you the truth. And if you want to sell, hey, make sure that you understand where you stand in that 2 to 4 times earnings range. Okay, for a small business. All right, let's move on. Okay, guys, so we've gone through a little bit more information about valuation, and I'm primarily speaking to small business owners right now. When you're selling your company, you got to include your assets. Are you selling your company, or are you just selling your assets? If you're selling your company, you got to include tangible and intangible assets. Tangible, something you can touch; intangible, something that's kind of up in the air. Your relationships with customers, your brand, all that kind of stuff can fall under intangible. Whereas tangible is fixed assets, something you can touch: a desk, a truck, a digger, a piece of equipment, a tool. Those are all fixed assets. Okay, you got to include those. Now, what about working capital? Working capital is cash or accounts receivables. That's the engine of the company. If you're selling the company, you got to include some working capital. Don't think that you can just take all the cash and all the AR out. Yeah, you finish the work on the AR, but the AR and the cash is the engine in your business. You take that out, any buyer who comes along is going to have to replenish that. How are they going to replenish that? Maybe you agree that you're not going to put any in, but guess what happens to your selling price? It goes down. So one way or another, it's got to be included if you want to make a deal. Remember, only 1 out of 13 companies sells. And I've given you a number of reasons why the ones that don't sell, don't sell. So don't make those mistakes if you really want to sell. If you want to waste your time with a broker and waste your time dealing with potential buyers and not follow the guidelines that I've mentioned in this video, I mean, that's your prerogative, but you know what? You're probably not going to sell. So I'm just warning you in advance, don't go outside of the market conditions. You got to be reasonable. Yeah, you put a lot of effort into it, but you are getting a lump sum, or you're going to get some payments over a period of time, or maybe a combination of the two in return for that work that you've done. And the buyer is assuming the risk of taking over and losing relationships with existing customers and them not trusting. I mean, there's a lot of things from a risk standpoint that a buyer has to look at. Okay,
Now, I wanted to discuss one recent example of a seller, which I thought was interested in selling, but as it turns out, he was a dud and was not interested in selling. So, at least not under the terms that I felt were reasonable. So let me give you an example. Let me give you this example in some detail. So this is a construction company. It was out on the East Coast, and his asking price was $1 million. $1 million even. And he wasn't using a broker, which is generally good for us to deal directly with each other, buyer and seller, me being the buyer. I looked at his financials, and over the past 3 years, he's averaging about $200,000 a year in net profit on his P&L. Remember what I said in the last clip earlier in this video? Small business making somewhere between $200,000 and $400,000. About $200,000 in EBITDA. You're probably looking somewhere between a 2 and a 3 multiple. He had no assets, almost no assets. Had an old truck. Was in a niche market, which I liked, which I definitely knew that I could develop if we could agree on price. And if we included all the tools, all the hard assets that he said he had about $46,000 worth. $46,000 worth of assets for a company that he's asking $1 million for. So there's a lot of intangibles there. Now the question is, are there enough intangibles? Is there enough cash flow to support that kind of valuation? So again, I did the math, roughly about $200,000 a year in earnings after he paid himself. I can't include his salary. I can include his salary. I made some adjustments for a general manager. Like he was taking more than what a general manager would cost. Still, it was just over $200,000. So we averaged that over 3 years, $200,000. And even if we use a multiple of 3 or 4 times, we're at about $800,000 as a selling price, which I felt was probably a little too high, but I liked the business and I liked the market. I didn't think it was going to be affected much by the upcoming recession that we're most likely going to have. So I thought, yeah, it's a good one. I offered him $830,000. He didn't like that offer. Remember, he's asking for $1 million. What he does is he goes out to a broker, and I said, by all means, go out to the broker. And he named the broker and picked the broker, and I said, you know what? They're pretty good. They're a pretty good broker. By all means, go get a price from them. The broker comes back and tells him his business is worth $1.1 million without providing any working capital. If I include working capital, his business is worth $1.3 million. Remember, $200,000 is what he was claiming in income. Now, the caveat here is that he said, you know what? I do a lot of cash. Really? How much cash do you do? Well, it's going to be a lot. A lot. Almost double what he's reporting. Not my problem. You know what, business owners? Here's a... It can be possibly positive for you, but it can definitely be negative too. So if you choose not to report income, you choose to defraud the IRS, hey, you know what? Nothing to do with me. That's your choice. I would recommend going against that because, first of all, you should be paying the taxes that you are required to pay after you've taken advantage of all the laws that are out there that help business owners reduce their taxation. So if you've followed the legal methods and you pay your fair share, there's nothing to be worried about. Plus, you're showing more net income than if you hide cash. Showing more net income shows a higher valuation for your company. You're going to sell for more. Remember, the more EBITDA that you have, the higher the multiple that you can sell for over a period of time. So you should be striving to increase your profits, increase your sales. Don't sit there and stay constant. And if you don't know how to grow your business, ask for professional help, i.e. me. or someone else, anyone who knows what they're doing in terms of making a company grow, increasing your profits, and increasing the valuation of your company. But this particular guy chose not to do that. Instead, he was trying to convince me that there's all this cash here and I got to get it in terms of price. I basically said, okay, had a conversation with him. And he said, the broker said your offer was pretty good if you didn't include the accounts receivable. Well, accounts receivable were about $200,000. So I said, okay, I'll increase my offer by $70,000. That's almost halfway to an agreeable amount to where he was thinking. And he turns around and tried to mislead me in an email where he said, I'll do $900,000. So I'll agree to your price. I'll take back a $90,000 loan, which I'll give to you. And then the balance will be from the bank. But then in the detail, the loan was for $290,000, not $90,000. I said, but this adds up to $1.1 million. Yeah, it's $1.1 million. But you agreed to $900,000. Okay, so now I've lost total trust in this guy. He wants $1.1 million, but he's saying he agrees to $900,000. So he didn't want to give me any working capital. He wanted to sell me this business, no cash, no working capital, $40,000, $45,000 worth of equipment. So he claims for $1.1 million. Would you guys do that deal? Would you do the deal? Maybe, huh? You gonna trust that he's doing all that cash? Can't do that. What you report to the IRS and what you report on your P&L, that's what we have to work with. And then we have to verify on the bank statements what money went in, what money went out to make sure that your P&L is actually accurate or reasonably accurate. Okay. So that was not a doable deal. Okay, so I just wanted to let you know, he originally asked for $1 million. He's advertising for $1 million. He ultimately wanted to sell it for $1.1 million, higher than what he originally asked for. Did he have any other buyers? No. I'm convinced he had no other buyers. So I had to walk away. So, moral of the story. Moral of the story is value your business correctly. Keep in mind that you have to provide some working capital. I asked for effectively 30 days worth of sales in working capital. I think that's fair. You got to include your assets. Don't go picking and choosing. Okay, I got it. If you've got a building and you've got land, I got it. You don't want to include that in the valuation. Totally understand. But if you've got equipment, and just because you have a newer truck, you want to start pulling that out and only include other? No. If it's owned by the company, it's owned by the company. It's part of the sale. Don't start nickel and diming your buyer. Be fair and understand your valuations. Again, it's going to be somewhere between 2 and 4 times if you've got a small business doing up to about $1 million worth of EBITDA. If you're a little over $1 million or you're $1 million, you might do 5 times EBITDA, but that's about it. You're not going to get any higher than that. That is the market, guys. You can wish and think that you're going to win the lottery. Somebody's going to come along and is going to pay you 10 times what your earnings are. They are not going to do that unless they're complete idiots. So if you think you're going to find an idiot buyer with that kind of money, that kind of clout that's going to be able to raise that kind of money, you're probably better off playing one of the lotteries where you've got a chance of 1 in 400 billion of winning. Okay? So that's all I want to say for today. Now, fun fact. The following sentence is interesting. It contains all the letters of the English alphabet. The quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. You've probably heard that before. It has every single letter from A to Z in it. The quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. Fun fact. Anyway, hopefully you enjoyed the video. Hopefully you learned something. And if you have any questions, post down below. If you need to get in touch with me, contact information is down below. Get in touch. You need any help with your business, You need help improving your profits. Man, so many businesses need that help. They think it's a cost. Nope. For every $3 that I put in your bank account, you will pay me 1. So I'm going to give you a 3-to-1 assurance that I will do that. And we're going to go step by step. And then if you choose to do consulting with me, it is on a day-by-day basis. You can cancel anytime. No long-term contracts. That's how sure I am of my skill set to help your business make more money. So if you need help, give me a call. Get in touch down below. In the description box, you'll get the contact information. Until next time, keep raising your profit.